Star Trek, DS9's elite Starfleet Academy cadets were so much worse than TNG's. When Star Trek Deep Space Nine introduced Red Squad, it seemed like an opportunity to explore the elite side of Starfleet Academy, a group of cadets so skilled, so disciplined, and so talented that they represented the very best of the Federation's next generation. Instead, Red Squad became a cautionary tale, a stark contrast to the Star Trek, the next generation era of hopeful cadets like Wesley Crusher and the much-beloved Lower Decks characters. DS9 showed us what happens when youthful brilliance collides with arrogance, blind obedience, and unchecked ambition. In doing so, it painted a far darker picture of Starfleet's future than TNG ever dared. This difference in portrayal reflects the tonal shifts between the two series. TNG, firmly rooted in Gene Roddenberry's optimistic vision, portrayed cadets as flawed but earnest young people learning how to embody Starfleet's ideals. DS9, by contrast, questioned what happened when those ideals clashed with war, politics, and personal ambition. And nowhere was that difference starker than in how it treated its Academy hopefuls. The TNG cadets, hopeful, human, and honest. In the next generation, Starfleet Academy stories were often aspirational. Wesley Crusher's journey toward the Academy gave audiences a front-row seat to the kind of testing, challenges, and growth that shaped the Federation's future officers. Episodes like Coming of Age and The First Duty emphasized that even the most gifted cadets could falter. Take The First Duty. Wesley, part of Nova Squadron, participated in an illegal maneuver that killed a fellow cadet. It was a damning mistake, but the episode's moral was clear. The truth mattered more than pride, and Starfleet demanded integrity above all else. Wesley learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it. Importantly, the story didn't demonize the cadets. It framed them as young people under immense pressure who lost their way, but who could still grow into better officers. Even Lower Decks showed the struggles of Academy graduates, painting them as ambitious, insecure, and occasionally reckless, but also deeply sympathetic. We rooted for them because they were us, bright-eyed dreamers trying to find a place in the galaxy's most demanding organization. TNG's cadets reflected the Federation's hopeful future, sometimes flawed, sometimes arrogant, but always redeemable. DS9's Red Squad, talent without temperance. Contrast that with DS9's Red Squad. This elite group of Academy cadets, first introduced in the fourth season episode Homefront, were treated with reverence by other students. They were the best of the best, chosen for their skill and potential. But rather than embodying Starfleet's ideals, they quickly revealed themselves as prideful, entitled, and disturbingly obedient to authority without question. In Homefront, Nog idolized them. For the Ferengi cadet, who struggled to gain legitimacy in Starfleet, Red Squad represented everything he thought he wanted to be. But the reality was darker. These cadets weren't symbols of excellence, they were tools. They carried out secret orders without understanding their purpose, too eager to please superiors to question morality. Their most damning appearance came in Season 6's Valiant. The episode followed Jake Sisko and Nog after they were rescued by the USS Valiant, a ship crewed entirely by Red Squad cadets after its senior officers were killed. What unfolded was a chilling portrait of unearned confidence and militaristic zeal. Led by acting Captain Tim Waters, the cadets turned the Valiant into a fantasy of glory. Instead of retreating to Federation space or waiting for reinforcements, they embarked on a suicidal mission to destroy a Dominion battleship. Waters, fueled by adrenaline, ego, and blind faith in Starfleet's expectations, drove them to their deaths. Only Jake and Nog survived. Valiant was a brutal dismantling of the Red Squad myth. It showed how young, untested officers could be seduced by the illusion of greatness and die because of it. Unlike Wesley Crusher's Nova Squadron, these cadets didn't learn from their mistakes. They perished because of them. Arrogance versus humility. The core difference between TNG's and DS9's cadets lies in how they confronted their flaws. Wesley Crusher and the Nova Squadron cadets lied, but ultimately faced accountability. Wesley admitted his role, took responsibility, and set himself back on the right path. The moral of the story was that humility and truth win over ego. Red Squad, by contrast, leaned into their arrogance. They mistook their training and talent for invincibility. Waters wasn't just misguided, he was dangerously delusional, pushing his crew into catastrophe because he believed greatness was their destiny. In TNG, mistakes became lessons. In DS9, mistakes became tombstones, a reflection of tone between series. It's not just the cadets themselves that mark the difference, it's the eras in which they were written. The Next Generation aired during the late 80s and early 90s, when Star Trek embraced Roddenberry's idealism. Even when it depicted flaws in the Federation, it ultimately reassured us that humanity was on the right path. The cadets embodied youthful innocence, and their growth affirmed the Federation's values. Deep Space Nine was a 90s series shaped by darker storytelling and serialized war arcs. It asked harder questions about the Federation's ideals, showing how they bent or broke under pressure. Red Squad wasn't just a group of arrogant cadets. They were symbols of what happens when Federation optimism meets militarization and hubris. The contrast couldn't be clearer. TNG's cadets symbolized hope, while DS9's Red Squad symbolized the dangers of blind loyalty and unchecked ambition. Nog, the exception that proves the rule. Nog's journey through Starfleet Academy is worth highlighting because it shows DS9 wasn't dismissive of cadets entirely. Nog began as the quintessential outsider, dismissed by others for being Ferengi, underestimated for his background, and constantly working to prove himself. Unlike Red Squad, Nog wasn't handed status or glory. He clawed for it, struggled for it, and faced ridicule for it. When he idolized Red Squad, it was out of his desire to belong. But his survival of the Valiant incident gave him a sobering perspective. Excellence wasn't about prestige or elite squads. It was about integrity, responsibility, and humility. Nog grew into one of DS9's best examples of Starfleet values. In fact, his development makes Red Squad's failure even more striking. Nog succeeded where Red Squad failed because he learned the lesson they never could. Greatness isn't declared, it's earned. Why DS9's cadets hit harder? There's a reason DS9's portrayal of cadets left such an impact. While TNG reassured us that mistakes were stepping stones to growth, DS9 showed us that mistakes, when fueled by arrogance, could destroy lives. Red Squad's downfall carried several chilling messages. One, the dangers of hero worship. Nog's blind admiration for Red Squad nearly cost him his life. It was a warning about idolizing institutions or individuals without understanding their flaws. 2, youthful arrogance in war. Unlike TNG's peacetime exploration, DS9 took place during the Dominion War. Red Squad reflected the grim reality that war pushes young soldiers into roles they aren't ready for, with disastrous consequences. 3, failure of leadership. Starfleet itself was complicit. By elevating Red Squad, the Academy created an environment where young cadets believed themselves untouchable. Their downfall wasn't just personal, it was institutional. This made their story resonate more deeply than Wesley's mistakes or the lower deck struggles. Red Squad wasn't just a failed group of students, they were a symbol of how ideals can collapse under the weight of ego and militarism. Conclusion: TNG's future versus DS9's reality. In comparing Star Trek's two portrayals of Academy cadets, the difference is almost philosophical. TNG's cadets were idealists who faltered but learned. They represented the future, flawed but full of promise. DS9's Red Squad were prodigies who mistook talent for wisdom and glory for destiny. They represented a sobering reminder that brilliance without humility is dangerous.